Next time someone says 90s comics are nothing but trash, throw Astro City in their face. Please don't throw Astro City at anyone's face. We do not condone the act of throwing comics at anyone's face. You can throw anything else you want at their face, just don't throw comics. It's just a figure of speech. Anyway, here I am with Astro City Metrobook Volume 1. There's a Volume 2 that has already been solicited, so that makes me very happy to hear. Long time coming. This book is one of my favorite books created by Kurt Busiek, and also, of course, Alex Ross and Brent Anderson. But here we have the very first volume. Let's take a look at the spine right here. Astro City Volume 1, and then the back of the book. Step into a whole new world and find out what it's like to live there. Astro City. So my job here today is to do an overview of this, but also with a pitch, because I love this book and I want this to succeed. I want to see this all the way through. And then hearing Kurt Busiek, the creator of this, talk about the possibility of a hardcover coming. Well, he has been talking about that for many years, but knock on wood, hopefully this time he will see the demand of this particular book and actually get us a hardcover. But for the meantime, we get one of these big trade paperbacks. And honestly, this is a huge book. This book right here is 496 pages, retailing for $29.99. So just a little bit of history about Astro City. Astro City started in 1995. And that's what I mean, like 90s comics suck. Do people forget about this or Preacher or Transmetropolitan or Hitman? Just to name a few. I think people always throw the 90s under the bus when it comes to comics. So a little bit of history. So this first started out at Image Comics and in 1995. And it was the brainchild of Alex Ross and of Kurt Busiek, and then Brent Anderson, of course, applying the wonderful pencils here. Let's go ahead and open up the first issue, and then we'll talk a little bit about the first issue, but I wanted to show you exactly the roles that each of these people played. Alex Ross applying the covers, but also the character designs for these particular characters. Brent Anderson supplying the internal artwork for these characters. Naked Man Flying. If that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. And, of course, Kurt Busiek writing the stories. Now, Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross had worked together before in the series of Marvels for Marvel Comics. Kurt Busiek had been writing, actually, for a long time, doing some things behind the scenes, and then, of course, blowing up big at both Marvel and DC. And then he came over to Image to do his own creator-owned stuff. So in 1995, this was published at Image Comics, and then it went over to the Homage Studios, which was part of the whole Wildstorm universe, or Wildstorm Studios rather, with Jim Lee. And then when Jim Lee sold Wildstorm Studios to DC, they bought him out, and DC decided to make Jim Lee. I think he was vice president at the time. But anyway, this was printed over by Vertigo, and now it's finally back home because it's creator owned. So, Astro City. How do I sell this book? Well, the very first thing is we got to get rid of this misconception that we throw as reviewers and as reader of comics and as peers of comic book collectors. There's this misconception that we have thrown at people that the best type of comics are stories like Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, Born Again, where it's taking and deconstructing the superhero lore and pretty much trying to rebuild them up from that deconstruction. The true to life, the gritty stuff. It seems like as comic book reviewers and as comic book collectors and readers, those are the kind of stories that we tell our friends to read. Oh, you want to read a really good Batman story? Well, let me show you Dark Knight Returns. And don't get me wrong, I love Watchmen. I love Dark Knight Returns. Born Again. It's my favorite Daredevil story. Actually, Man Without Fear. But anyway, my point is, Kurt Busiek actually takes that formula and reverses it. So instead of this being a deconstruction of superhero stories, it is a reconstruction, making you believe again in what makes superheroes good, in what gives us hope. And that's why I love comics. because of stories like this. Because that's why you see a wide variety of different collections on my shelves, because I love all types of different stories. Yes, I love Watchmen, but every once in a while I do want to read a classic superhero story where good is good and bad is bad. There in the, I guess in the early aughts, DC had this idea where every character was gray, and that's wonderful. That's why I enjoyed Infinite Crisis so much. You had the classic superheroes that were lost in Crisis on Infinite Earths come back and say, hey, these characters are not good people. So this takes us back to that almost simple time, but done in such a unique and wonderful way that you don't even notice it. But you're falling in love with superheroes that are just that. They're good people, but they're also humans. And I'm not saying none of them are flawed, because when you're reading this, you're going to notice some things. But let me just show you the pure innocence of the Samaritan. So the Samaritan is the character that you see here flying around. He's the character on the cover. He's the very first person you're reading about. So the Samaritan is flying around all naked, and then he wakes up. But it's not his alarm that's waking him up. It's actually an emergency alert. So he gets stressed, and he goes out and flies through the city trying to stop crime. We also see him having a secret identity. He is a reporter, which we've seen before, so you could say that this is your Superman type, of course. But unlike Superman, he actually built a machine to write his stories for him, to write his articles for him while he's out fighting crime. Now, the whole time he's out fighting crime, he keeps talking about time, like how much time he's spending doing something. Like when he spends 2 seconds with a little girl and saving her kitty cat, or when he's fighting this menagerie gang right here. And this is also where we get to meet these characters, which are part of the honor guard, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. But this whole time, writing articles, you see him just counting down how much time goes by and you start thinking, okay, is he feeling guilty because he could be doing something else? He could be saving someone else. Or is he feeling guilty because he's tired? He wants to sleep? What is going on? This is the part I was talking about with the kitty cat right here, that he spends 2 seconds too long, that a man almost loses his life being crushed by a building. Then he gets an award from the fire department, and he feels like he's spending way too much time there at the Firefighters Association, so he can try to sneak out. I love this. This is like almost like his Fortress of Solitude, but it exists on a different plane. This is where he hangs up his awards, and he gets attacked by this living nightmare. Now, the whole time, like I said, it feels like, okay, we get to see his inner monologue. He starts talking to himself about all this time being wasted. And it goes back to the very beginning right here, where it says, in my dreams, I fly. And finally, we get to find out the twist. 56 seconds. Best day since March. And it is so he can just go to sleep and dream of flying. Where he is free from just the responsibility of saving anybody. And all he's doing is just flying. That is your first issue. That's the kind of stories you're going to be reading about in here. And the stories are not done in chronological order. Some of them take place in the past. Some of them take place in present time. And each issue that are collected in this first, at least the first 6 issues, the way that they're collected, is they're all standalone stories. You get to find out about the first family through here. This second issue is about a reporter. It's a flashback to 1959. To him writing an article for his first newspaper. The third story is one of my favorites, about this guy named Eyes, who found out who Jack in the Box's secret identity is. So the whole time he's spending, and this is he's a bad guy. He's like a thug that accidentally stumbles onto the secret identity of this superhero known as Jack in the Box. And he's just imagining best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, what he can do with that. If he sells the secret identity to the mob, is the mob going to kill him? If he tries to extort him for money, is he going to pay him, or is he going to put him in jail? It's all these things. The fourth issue is we get to see about, what is it called? Shadow Hill, which is a district of Astro City. And all of this, by the way, takes place in a city called Astro City. So think of like Gotham Metropolis or New York for Marvel Comics, New York City. But it's a fictional city, and then one of the districts is called Shadow Hill. And Shadow Hill is creepy. Shadow Hill is protected by this hangman. So we meet this young lady that lives in Shadow Hill, and through her eyes, you get to find out what makes Shadow Hill unique. Like, there's talismans, there's spells, they're talking about vampires, and it's just everyday life to her before she travels to the big city. And so on, and those are the kind of stories you're going to find in here. There's Cracker Jack, one of my favorite characters. So you do have your Superman type. You have Winged Victory, who's like your Wonder Woman. You have the First Family, who's like the Fantastic Four. You have MPH, who's like... it's the Accelerated Man, or Acceleration Ace. He's like your Flash. You have your Batman character. You have your almost Captain America character in here. You have your stereotypes. And this is just such a wonderful story that I don't think very many people talked about. And that's why I wanted to bring the attention to it on my channel. That this is out in trade paperback. I recommended it in my top 10, saying that this is a definite buy. It's one of my favorite stories. And I hope people are checking it out. Because like I said, Kurt Busiek did say that there will be a hardcover, but he has been saying that for a long time. And I really hope it comes, because I cannot wait to own this in hardcover format. But for now, this Metro book is the best way to own it. Now, I do have a theory, and this is just my opinion, that the reason this didn't reach the popularity of something like Kingdom Come or Marvel's, that everyone, has a copy of Astro City in their library, or everyone was talking about it, is because Alex Ross did not supply the internal artwork. Alex Ross and he does amazing, beautiful covers. But the internal artwork is done by Brant Anderson. And, it's quite a change to go from this to this. If you're expecting this to be the internal artwork, then I'm pretty sure most people that picked it up, some people, of course, are disappointed. Now, to me, I really like Brant Anderson. And yes, it probably has to do with the fact that he worked on X-Men and my favorite X-Men story, God Loves, Man Kills. Now, God Loves, Man Kills was originally supposed to be drawn by Neil Adams, so they got Brant Anderson to draw it. I have never made that connection until rereading this. How much Brant Anderson's art feels like that dynamic art style of Neil Adams. It's Neil Adams. Nobody can really be on Neil Adams, but I think there's definitely a look to that art that Brant Anderson... I don't think he's trying to achieve being a clone of Neil Adams at all. He has his own style, but there's a definite Neil Adams feel to his art. And it wasn't until this book, honestly, till I was rereading it a couple of years ago, because what was it called? Life in the Big City was the very first volume, which is the first 6 issues here. But you get more than that in here. Oh, that's one thing I didn't talk about. What is collected in this particular collection? So you get the first 6 issues, which is called Volume 1, and then Volume 2, you get issues 1 through 12, and the half issue. The half issue is one of the best issues, but you can find out why I think that by reading this yourself. I don't want to talk about any of the other stories, because I still want people to be surprised. Maybe we should do an old reader, new reader on this, and I can come back to that segment for just this particular read-through. Because I really enjoy this, and I want to hear other people's thoughts about this. Because to me, this series still stands out as one of the most unique reconstructions of superhero comics, taking us back to, not just Silver Age, but almost like the golden age of comics, where the good guys were pure and human, and the bad guys stood out. I love this book. It makes me happy that, I read comics to this day and still find things like this to share with people. Because Astro City has been out of print for so long. Talking about it on my channel, I try to talk about books that are still in print, even though that's almost impossible to do on a daily basis. But I think it was such a good book. Now I can freely talk about it because it's out in print and people can go out and purchase it. But I think I've said enough about Astro City. There's Winged Victory. Oh, I didn't even talk about the Confessor and Altar Boy. These guys are awesome. And he's such a badass. And Altar Boy's having this identity crisis, you know, separating his superhero sidekick life with his real life. Yeah, man, you are in for a treat. If you're looking for extras, however, there are no extras in the back. Just about the creators and then the ads. For this, which I need to do an overview of Aerosmith. Just got it in the mail yesterday. But, yeah, hopefully they'll have a hardcover collection, and it'll be oversized, that will have all the extras, including the sketches and character designs by Alex Ross. But that's it for me. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of this trade paperback. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up for the first time. If you've never heard of Astro City, hopefully I was able to sell you on this amazing comic. If you're going to wait on the hardcover that Kurt Busiek said is coming, we already have a volume 2 of these trades solicited, but no word yet on when that hardcover will come. We've been waiting years for it, so I can wait a little bit longer. This was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Spreadshop and Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And more importantly, all of you, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.